Imagine coming home after a long day, only to find the one place you thought was safe hiding the darkest secret. A brave police officer, his little girl, and a loyal German shepherd are about to face betrayal, danger, and a fight for love that will test every bond of family. What would you do if the people closest to you turned into your greatest threat? Stay with me until the end, because this story will remind you that even in the deepest shadows, love can still be the light. And before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop a comment below, hit subscribe so you never miss these powerful stories, and may your day be filled with strength, hope, and kindness. The November winds swept across the quiet neighborhoods of Portland, Oregon, carrying with them a chill that rattled the bare branches of maple trees lining the streets. A fine mist hung in the air, half rain and half fog, giving the city an unsettled gray glow as dusk settled. The houses stood in neat rows, their warm amber lights fighting back the encroaching dark. But the Whitfield home, a sturdy red brick structure on a tree-lined cul-de-sac, felt different tonight, as if it had pulled the shadows closer rather than casting them away. Detective Aaron Whitfield parked his sedan in the driveway, the tires crunching against the damp gravel. He was a tall man of 42, broad-shouldered and strong from years of chasing suspects down alleys and through city blocks. His face bore the weariness of the profession, a square jaw perpetually tight, crow's feet around his storm-gray eyes, and dark stubble shadowing a mouth that rarely smiled outside of rare moments with his daughter. His uniform had been traded for plain clothes tonight, dark slacks and a weatherproof jacket, but his bearing carried the same sense of authority that had earned him both respect and unease within the Portland Police Department. Aaron had been gone on assignment for weeks, and though his body ached with fatigue, his heart surged with anticipation at the thought of his little girl running into his arms. Lily Whitfield, 7 years old, had been the anchor in Aaron's life since the passing of her mother 3 years earlier. He remembered Lily's tangled auburn hair, her freckled cheeks, her way of skipping barefoot across the kitchen tiles in the summer, as if the whole house belonged to her joy. In his mind, she would still come dashing to him, squealing, "Daddy," with the purity of unshaken trust. That thought alone had carried him through cold motel rooms and endless paperwork during his latest assignment. But tonight, as Aaron pushed open the heavy wooden front door, the house did not meet him with the sound of footsteps or the sweet voice of his child. Instead, it exhaled a silence so complete it seemed rehearsed. The lamps glowed steadily, the rugs were aligned, the air even carried a hint of lavender from the diffuser Monica insisted on using. Everything looked perfect, but perfection had its own menace when life was absent from it. Monica Whitfield, Aaron's second wife, had married him less than a year ago. She was a tall, willowy woman in her mid-30s with sharp cheekbones and blonde hair that she styled immaculately, never a strand out of place. Her eyes, a pale blue that often sparkled with warmth in public, carried something colder when she was behind closed doors. Raised in a strict household where appearances were everything, Monica had learned early to equate control with love and discipline with virtue. On the outside, she was gracious, polite, the kind of woman who made friends at charity luncheons and smiled for every camera. Yet, underneath that grace was a brittleness, as if she had once been wounded and had chosen severity as armor. To neighbors, she seemed devoted, a woman who cared deeply for her husband and his daughter. To Aaron, she often appeared eager to please, always cooking meals, tidying the house, speaking softly. But tonight, the softness was gone. Aaron set his suitcase down in the living room next to a small gift box wrapped in cream paper. Inside was a porcelain doll he had found in a shop near Union Square, one Lily had described wistfully months ago. He had imagined the moment, the doll in her hands, the laughter spilling out of her chest, her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck. The gift sat waiting, but Lily's footsteps did not come. Then, a sharp noise sliced the silence. The clatter of metal against tile, followed by a shrill voice from the kitchen. Aaron moved quickly, his instincts sharpened from years of walking into the unexpected. He pushed open the kitchen door, and the sight struck him still. Lily knelt on the cold tiled floor, her thin arms raised over her head as if to shield herself from a storm of invisible blows. Her auburn hair hung loose and messy, strands matted against cheeks wet with tears. Vegetable peels, paper scraps and greasy leftovers clung to her small frame, sliding down her pink nightgown and pooling on the floor. Her lips trembled as she cried out, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean to." The words broken, strangled, as if she had been forced to repeat them before. Her shoulders quaked violently, not with the rebellion of a child being punished, but with the terror of one crushed beneath a weight too heavy to carry. Towering above her was Monica, her manicured hands gripping a plastic trash bin that had just been upended over the girl. Monica's face, normally composed, was twisted into an expression of icy fury, her pale eyes blazing, her lips pulled tight. She was tall, almost regal in posture, but the elegance was lost in the harshness of her glare. Her voice rang out sharp and merciless. "You insolent child! How dare you waste food when there are people starving? Do you think you can throw away what others work hard for? Not in this house, not under my roof." And there, in the corner near the pantry door, crouched Rook, the German Shepherd Aaron had adopted from the K9 unit when the dog had retired 2 years earlier. Rook was 6 years old, large and imposing, with a black and silver coat that shimmered even in the dim kitchen light. His ears stood erect, his amber eyes locked on the scene before him. Rook had always been fiercely protective of Lily, shadowing her steps, sleeping by her bed at night, nudging her gently when nightmares woke her. Now, his lips peeled back ever so slightly, a low growl rumbling from deep within his chest. His body was taut, muscles rippling beneath his fur, as if restraining himself from launching forward. Aaron felt the blood rush to his head, a roar filling his ears. For a split second, disbelief paralyzed him. This was not the domestic tranquility he had left weeks ago, but a nightmare unfolding in his own kitchen. Then instinct took over. He lunged forward, pulling Lily up into his arms. The little girl stiffened, almost unrecognizing, then clutched his shirt with trembling fingers, burying her wet face against his chest. She smelled of spoiled food and salt tears, her tiny frame frighteningly light, as if months of neglect had whittled her down. "What the hell are you doing, Monica?" Aaron's voice cut through the air, firm and sharp like the crack of a gavel. Monica flinched, her grip on the trash bin loosening until it clattered to the ground. In an instant, her expression shifted. Fury dissolved into horror, tears welling in her pale eyes as she reached out a trembling hand. "Aaron, you're back. I didn't know you'd come home early. Please, it's not what it looks like. I only wanted to teach her discipline. She's become stubborn, always refusing to listen. I was afraid if she keeps this up, she'll grow up spoiled." Her voice broke into sobs, her frame shaking as she dabbed at her eyes with the corner of her sleeve. Aaron stared at her, hardly believing the performance. His eyes dropped to Lily, pressed against him as if afraid to let go, her small body trembling. She did not look at him, not directly, as though some fragile trust had already been fractured. Her tiny fingers clutched his shirt as if he might disappear again. Rook, still crouched in the corner, gave a sharp bark, his growl deepening as if echoing the rage Aaron could not yet voice. The detective tightened his hold on his daughter. His voice dropped low, steady, but laced with fury. "Discipline is not dumping trash on a 7-year-old. She is my daughter. She's already lost her mother. She's suffered enough. You will never treat her like this again." Monica's tears fell faster, her body trembling, but her eyes, just for a flicker, hardened with something colder before she lowered her gaze. Aaron pressed his cheek against Lily's hair, whispering softly, "Don't be afraid. Daddy's home now. No one will ever hurt you again." Lily said nothing. Her lips quivered, her eyes closed, and she held on to him as if clinging to the last safe place in the world. And in that silent, trembling embrace, Aaron understood with a clarity that chilled him. His return had not come a moment too soon. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, clouds sagging low over Portland, as if the city itself bore secrets it could not confess. Rain tapped against the windows of the Whitfield home, thin streams running down the glass, blurring the shapes of bare trees outside. Inside, the house was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that pressed on the chest, made every creak of the floorboard echo like an accusation. Aaron sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, the soft quilt bunched beneath his hand as he studied Lily's sleeping form. Her auburn hair clung damply to her forehead, her small shoulders rising and falling with uneven breaths. He brushed a strand away and saw the faint mark on her wrist again, a deep purple bruise shaped like fingers pressed too hard. His chest tightened, anger flaring, but guilt eclipsed it quickly. He had been gone too long. Rook, the 6-year-old German shepherd, lay curled on the rug near the bed, his coat black and silver, his eyes half open, glowing faintly in the dim light. He stirred every time Lily shifted, his ears twitching, his nose lifting as though testing the air for danger. To anyone else, he was a formidable creature, but in this room he looked like a sentry carved from loyalty, unwilling to surrender his post, even to sleep. When Lily finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open, she blinked at her father's presence. For a moment there was recognition, then hesitation, as if she wasn't sure whether she could trust the image before her. She pressed closer to Rook, burying her small hand in the thick fur at his neck. Aaron forced a smile, though his heart twisted. "Morning sunshine," he said softly. "How's the wrist?" She shook her head quickly, pulling the injured hand under the blanket as if to hide it. Her lips parted, but no words came. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toast. Monica stood by the counter, tall and straight as ever, wearing a pale blue blouse tucked neatly into a skirt. Every detail immaculate. Her blonde hair caught the light from the window, styled perfectly into waves that framed her angular face. To a stranger, she might have looked like a woman preparing to host a brunch, not someone recovering from a confrontation the night before. She glanced up when Aaron entered, her pale eyes shimmering as if they had been trained to hold tears indefinitely. "I didn't sleep," she murmured, her voice hushed, the edges softened with practiced regret. "I never wanted last night to happen." Aaron poured himself coffee, his movements clipped, controlled. "You dumped garbage on my child," he said flatly. Monica flinched but quickly clasped her hands before her chest, her slender frame trembling. "I lost my temper," she whispered. "You weren't here. It's hard, Aaron. She looks at me like I'm an intruder. I just wanted her to respect me." Her voice cracked, and for a fleeting second, Aaron thought he glimpsed something raw, but it vanished as quickly as it came, smoothed over with performance. He didn't answer. Rook padded into the room, tail low, eyes fixed on Monica. The growl that bubbled from his chest was soft, but unmistakable. Later that afternoon, Aaron drove Lily to school himself. The rain had eased to a drizzle, the city washed clean, but pale under the overcast sky. Lily sat in the back seat, hugging her backpack tightly, her eyes glued to the window. She was dressed in a faded pink sweater, her jeans slightly too short at the ankles, the shoes scuffed at the toes. Aaron watched her through the mirror, searching for words that might coax her to open. But silence sat between them like a wall. Finally, he said, "If something is wrong, you can always tell me. Nothing will change how much I love you." Lily's eyes flickered toward the mirror, her lips trembled, but she only whispered, "I'm fine, Dad," before turning away. The school itself was a modest brick building, its playground ringed by a chain-link fence slick with rain. Children scattered across the yard during recess, laughter carrying on the damp air. Yet, Lily moved differently. She found a corner of the yard and sat alone on a bench, pulling out a small lunchbox. Inside was a meager portion of rice, clumped together and cold. She lifted her fork, ate a few mouthfuls, then lowered it again. Her gaze wandered until it settled on the trash can a few yards away. Slowly, glancing around, she walked over, lifted the lid, and peered inside. Among the scraps sat a piece of bread, hardened but intact. She brushed dirt from it with small fingers, wrapped it carefully in a napkin, and slipped it into her pocket. A group of boys nearby had been watching. One tall, freckled boy with a mop of blonde hair pointed and laughed, his voice loud enough to carry across the yard. "Look, she's eating from the trash. Beggar girl!" The others joined in, mimicking her motions, clutching their stomachs in exaggerated disgust. Lily froze, her face flushing crimson, her eyes welling. She clutched the bread closer and hurried back to her bench, her small body bent as though trying to disappear. From the teacher's window, Ann Cooper saw it all. Ann was in her early 30s, a petite woman with chestnut hair tied back in a practical knot. Her face was serious, even stern at times, but her brown eyes carried a softness that appeared whenever she looked at her students. Raised in a family of teachers in rural Montana, Ann had grown up believing that compassion was the foundation of learning. She had noticed Lily for weeks now, the way the girl seemed withdrawn, the shadows beneath her eyes, the tremor in her hands when called upon to read aloud. Watching her mocked by classmates now, Anne felt her chest tighten. When the bell rang, Anne stepped into the hall, intercepting Lily as she walked back toward class. She crouched slightly to meet the girl's gaze, her voice low and gentle. "Are you okay, Lily?" The child's eyes darted nervously, her small hands clutching the bread still hidden in her pocket. She nodded quickly, whispering, "Yes, ma'am." Anne didn't push, but she rested a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "If you ever need to talk, you can come to me. Anytime." Lily only nodded again, her lips pressed tight. That evening, Aaron returned to pick his daughter up. She climbed into the back seat silently, her small frame dwarfed by the seatbelt. He tried to strike up conversation, asked about her classes, her friends, but she only nodded or shook her head, her eyes turned to the rain-streaked window. The wall between them seemed to grow higher. Back home, as twilight deepened into night, Aaron received a phone call. The number belonged to the school. Ann Cooper's voice came steady but concerned. "Mr. Whitfield, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I need to talk to you about Lily. She often looks exhausted, and today I caught her picking food out of the trash. I don't think she's eating enough. I thought you should know." Aaron gripped the phone tightly, his throat tightening. "Thank you," he managed, though the words scraped his throat like gravel. When he hung up, he sat heavily at his desk, the weight of guilt pressing on his chest. Images of Lily kneeling on the kitchen floor, clutching stale bread, haunted him. Upstairs, he heard her bedroom door close. Rook padded over, resting his heavy head on Aaron's knee, amber eyes watching him steadily, as if to remind him that vigilance could not waver again. The night stretched long. Rain hammered the roof, and Aaron lay awake, listening. Once, faintly, he thought he heard Lily whimper in her sleep, and the soft sound of Rook shifting onto the bed beside her, curling protectively at her feet. Aaron stared into the darkness, his mind burning with one relentless question. What had his little girl endured while he was gone? And as he closed his eyes, he knew one thing with painful clarity. The silence in his house was no longer the quiet of peace. It was the silence of fear, and it was killing his daughter slowly. The morning after the phone call left Aaron with dark hollows beneath his eyes. Portland looked washed in silver, the rain having cleansed the streets but leaving behind a heavy dampness that clung to everything. He drove Lily to school again, his jaw tight, his mind replaying Ann Cooper's words. The radio murmured low in the background, a static-filled weather report predicting more showers through the week. Lily sat in the back seat, clutching her backpack as though it were armor. Her small figure was nearly swallowed by the oversized seatbelt, and her reflection in the window glass looked paler than it should have for a child her age. Rook sat upright in the passenger seat, his ears pricked, his amber eyes flicking back and forth between Lily and the road, as if he understood the tension hanging in the air. At the school gates, Aaron parked and leaned back to look at his daughter. "I'll pick you up later," he said softly. "Don't forget to eat your lunch." Lily nodded without lifting her eyes, murmuring a quiet, "Okay, Dad." She stepped out into the drizzle, her thin figure darting quickly toward the school entrance. Aaron remained in the car for a moment, hand gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Then he exhaled sharply and stepped out. He had made up his mind the previous night. He wasn't going to wait for another phone call. He needed to meet Ann in person. Ann Cooper's classroom was on the second floor, overlooking the playground where children, oblivious to the storm of adult worries, chased each other in bright raincoats. Inside, the room smelled faintly of chalk and wet paper. Anne was erasing the blackboard when she noticed Aaron standing at the doorway. She was a petite woman in her early 30s, with chestnut hair pulled into a tidy bun and soft lines of fatigue at the corners of her eyes. Her clothing was simple, a gray cardigan over a white blouse, paired with dark slacks. But her presence carried both authority and gentleness, the kind that children instinctively trusted. "Aaron Whitfield?" she asked, setting down the eraser. Her voice was warm, but carried a note of careful professionalism. "Yes," Aaron replied, stepping inside. Rook padded in behind him, shaking rain from his coat, causing a few of the younger students lingering near the door to giggle nervously. Anne smiled faintly at the sight of the dog, but her eyes quickly turned serious again. They sat at the back of the classroom. Aaron rested his hands on the desk, broad and calloused, while Anne folded hers neatly in her lap. "I'm worried about Lily," she began. "She's quiet, too quiet for a child her age. And yesterday, well, you know what I saw. It's not the first time I've noticed things. She comes to class exhausted. Sometimes she hasn't eaten. And there's a guardedness in her eyes, as if she's afraid of something more than schoolwork." Aaron's chest tightened. "I didn't realize how bad it was until I got back from assignment," he admitted. His voice was low, gravelly. "I thought Monica was taking care of her." Anne's brows furrowed slightly. "Monica?" "My wife," Aaron said, the word tasting bitter. Anne studied him quietly. She wasn't a woman quick to judge, but she had seen too many children carry bruises in their hearts that adults ignored. She leaned forward, her brown eyes steady. "Detective Whitfield, forgive me if I'm blunt, but Lily needs stability. Whatever is happening at home, she's bearing more than a 7-year-old should. You're her anchor. If she loses trust in you, she may not trust anyone again." The words pierced Aaron sharper than any reprimand. He nodded slowly. "You're right, I have to do better." At that moment, the classroom door creaked open, and another figure stepped inside. Harris, the Whitfield family's butler, stood awkwardly in the doorway. Harris was a man in his 50s, tall but slightly stooped from years of labor. His hair, once black, was now streaked liberally with gray, and his weathered face carried a calm dignity, though shadows of unease lingered in his eyes. He wore a simple tweed coat and held a hat in his hands, twisting it nervously. "I'm sorry to intrude," Harris said softly, glancing at Anne before focusing on Aaron. "But I needed to tell you something in person." Aaron motioned for him to enter. Harris closed the door quietly and stepped forward. "I've served your family for 20 years. I swore loyalty to your late wife. God rest her soul. I've tried to keep silent out of fear of losing my position, but after what I've seen, I can't anymore. Monica often denies Lily meals. Sometimes she orders her to scrub floors or wash clothes late at night. I've found her crying alone more times than I can count. She hides the marks well, but I've seen them." His voice cracked slightly, a man unaccustomed to disloyalty, yet unwilling to betray his conscience further. Anne inhaled sharply, her eyes widening. Aaron's jaw tightened, his pulse pounding in his ears. He clenched his fists on the desk until the wood creaked beneath the pressure. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his tone a controlled growl. Harris bowed his head, shame coloring his expression. "Because Monica is clever. She's always different in front of you, and I feared that if I spoke, she'd punish Lily even worse. But when I saw the way your daughter clung to you last night, I couldn't stay quiet." Silence hung in the room, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Aaron exhaled, his voice rough. "Thank you, Harris. It won't happen again. Not one more day." Rook, as if sensing the vow, rose to his feet and nudged Aaron's leg, his amber eyes steady. Anne placed a gentle hand on Aaron's forearm. "She needs to know she's safe now. Show her with actions, not just words." Aaron nodded. He had faced criminals, stood down men with weapons, but never had his resolve felt as tested as it did in this quiet classroom with a teacher, a servant, and the ghost of his daughter's pain weighing on him. By the time the meeting ended, the rain outside had slowed to a mist. Aaron walked back to his car, Harris following behind, while Rook trotted beside them like a silent sentinel. The city seemed muted, every sound muffled, as though Portland itself were listening. When Aaron slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, he glanced at the school building where Lily sat in class. His heart ached, but his eyes hardened with resolve. Whatever monsters had found their way into his home, they would not claim his daughter again. That night, after dinner passed in strained silence, Aaron tucked Lily into bed. She curled beneath her blanket, clutching Rook's ear as he lay stretched across the floor beside her. Aaron kissed her hair softly, whispering, "No one will hurt you while I'm here." For the first time, Lily's eyes lifted to meet his, just for a heartbeat, before she buried her face in her pillow. It was not trust yet, but it was the faintest flicker of hope, and that was enough for Aaron to promise himself that he would tear down the walls of silence brick by brick until his daughter no longer trembled in her own home. The Whitfield home sat heavy under a curtain of rain, the steady downpour drumming against the roof as if nature itself wanted to wash away the shadows lingering inside. Portland's November chill had crept into the walls, and though the fireplace flickered in the living room, the air remained cold, uneasy. Dinner that evening was a strained ritual, every sound exaggerated, the scrape of forks against plates, the clink of glasses, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Aaron sat at the head of the table, his posture rigid, shoulders squared. He had chosen silence, watching instead of speaking, his storm-gray eyes shifting between Monica and Lily. Across from him, Monica appeared the picture of domestic grace. She wore a fitted maroon dress, her blonde hair styled into waves that gleamed in the candlelight. Her pale blue eyes softened every time they landed on Aaron, her lips curving in carefully rehearsed smiles. Yet, beneath that veneer, her hands moved with sharp precision, her gestures almost too deliberate, as though she were performing for an invisible audience. Lily sat beside her father, small and quiet, her pink sweater sleeves pulled down to hide her thin wrists. She ate slowly, picking at vegetables without appetite, her gaze lowered. Rook lay stretched across the kitchen threshold, his massive body coiled like a spring, his amber eyes fixed unblinkingly on Monica. Every time she reached across the table, his ears twitched, a low growl simmering in his chest, audible only to those who listened closely. Monica rose gracefully, her maroon dress swaying as she carried a tray from the stove. "I made chicken soup," she said brightly, setting the steaming bowl in front of Lily. "It's good for you, sweetheart. You hardly eat anything, and it breaks my heart." Her voice was gentle, almost plaintive, but Aaron noted the tightness around her eyes, the faint impatience she failed to mask. Lily hesitated, glancing at her father. Aaron gave a small nod of reassurance. Just as Lily reached for the spoon, Monica tilted the ladle with what seemed like a slip of the wrist. A stream of hot broth splashed across Lily's small hand. The girl gasped, pulling back quickly, her eyes flooding with tears as the skin turned red. "Ah!" she whimpered, clutching her hand. Aaron leapt from his chair, grabbing her arm to examine the burn. The skin glowed angry pink, droplets of broth sliding down her wrist. "What the hell, Monica?" His voice thundered through the dining room. Monica dropped the ladle, her pale eyes wide, tears instantly pooling. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. It was an accident, Aaron, I swear. I didn't mean to. My hand slipped." She reached forward, but Rook rose abruptly, a deep bark erupting from his throat, his hackles lifted, his teeth glinting. Monica froze, retreating a step, her painted nails clutching the back of the chair. Aaron carried Lily to the sink, running cool water over the burn. He murmured soft words, his large frame bending protectively over his daughter's fragile form. "You're okay, sweetheart. You're okay. Daddy's got you." Lily whimpered, tears sliding silently, but she pressed her face against his chest, her trust slipping back for a fleeting instant. The rest of dinner dissolved into silence. Monica sat stiff, her eyes shimmering with rehearsed regret, while Aaron stayed at Lily's side, his every movement radiating quiet fury. Rook never moved from his stance, his gaze locked on Monica as though he could see straight through the mask she wore. Later that night, when the house had settled into uneasy quiet, Aaron paced in his study. The lamp cast a pale circle of light on the mahogany desk, leaving the corners of the room steeped in shadow. He had spent his career chasing criminals through alleys and interrogation rooms, but nothing unnerved him as much as the danger that had seeped into his own home. Monica's apologies rang hollow. Accidents didn't leave bruises. Slipped hands didn't carry cold calculation in their eyes. Rook entered the study, his nails clicking softly against the wood floor. The dog pressed his head against Aaron's thigh, as if urging him toward a decision. Aaron crouched, gripping the thick fur at Rook's neck. "You see it too, don't you, boy? She's hurting her." Rook's amber eyes burned in the lamplight, his chest rumbling with a low growl. Aaron exhaled heavily. He knew he couldn't fight shadows with suspicion alone. He needed proof. He reached for the phone on his desk and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Rick Dawson picked up after the second ring. Rick was a private investigator in his late 40s, a former police officer who had left the force after blowing the whistle on corruption. He was tall and broad, with a weathered face carved by lines of cynicism, but eyes that still carried a spark of justice. His reputation was complicated, too blunt for politics, too honest for criminals, but for Aaron, that made him the man to trust. "Whitfield," Rick said, his voice gravelly, "didn't expect your call." "I need an investigation," Aaron said, his tone flat but weighted. "Discreet, on Monica." Rick whistled softly on the other end. "Your wife?" "Yes," Aaron snapped, then softer. "She's hurting my kid, and I think she's hiding more." There was silence, then Rick's voice steadied. "All right, I'll start tonight, but you'd better be ready for what I find. Sometimes the truth is uglier than suspicion." "I know," Aaron replied. His eyes drifted toward the staircase, where Lily slept upstairs, curled beside Rook. "I can handle ugly. What I can't handle is watching my daughter break." When he hung up, the weight of the decision settled on his shoulders, heavy but necessary. He leaned against the desk, his breath uneven. Outside, the rain eased into drizzle, tapping lightly on. The windows like fingers urging him forward. Upstairs, Lily whimpered in her sleep. Aaron climbed the stairs quietly, stepping into her room. She lay curled beneath the blanket, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit, her other hand bandaged lightly from the burn. Rook stretched beside her bed, his body forming a protective wall. Aaron sat on the edge of the mattress, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. Her lips moved faintly, whispering in her dream. He leaned closer and caught the words, "Don't hurt me." Aaron's throat tightened. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "No one will. Not anymore." Downstairs, Monica stood in the hallway just outside the study, her figure silhouetted against the dim light. Her pale eyes glimmered, unreadable, her lips curved in the faintest smile before she turned silently toward her bedroom. Aaron returned to his study, staring at the silent phone. The line had been cast, the wheels already turning. The shadows in his home had a face now, and soon they would have nowhere left to hide. The city of Portland seemed quieter than usual, as though the storm clouds had not only emptied their rain, but had also stolen away the noise of life. The Whitfield home, standing like a sentinel on its cul-de-sac, held a tension within its brick walls that no weather could disguise. Aaron returned from his shift earlier than expected, his boots wet with drizzle, his mind heavy with the weight of Rick Dawson's promise to begin investigating Monica. He stepped into the house and immediately felt the tension, silence where there should have been movement, the kind of silence that carried threat. In the kitchen, Monica was preparing another meal, her blonde hair tied in an elegant twist, her maroon dress replaced by a pale gray skirt and silk blouse. She looked refined, poised, the model of suburban grace. But Aaron noticed how her hands moved with a sharpness that betrayed irritation, not devotion. Her pale blue eyes lifted to him, with a smile rehearsed too many times. "You're home early," she said softly, her voice like honey dripping over a blade. Lily sat at the table, small and tentative, her shoulders hunched, her pink sweater sleeves tugged down as though she could hide inside them. In front of her was a half-filled glass of milk and a plate of bread she had barely touched. Her auburn hair was tucked behind her ears, her gray eyes darting nervously between her father and stepmother. Aaron tried to ease her fear, moving to sit beside her. "How's school, sweetheart?" he asked gently. Lily gave a small shrug, the kind that spoke more than words ever could. Rook, sprawled near the doorway, lifted his massive head, his amber eyes fixed steadily on Monica. The dog's muscles rippled subtly under his black and silver coat as he shifted, never letting his gaze falter. Monica placed a bowl of chicken stew on the table, the steam rising in rich swirls. "Eat," she said sweetly, though the command in her tone was unmistakable. Lily hesitated, her small fingers curling around the spoon. Aaron noticed the slight tremble in her hand. He reached out, steadying her wrist, whispering, "It's okay." But the moment fractured in an instant. Monica moved quickly, too quickly for an accident. As she ladled more stew, her wrist twisted and scalding broth splashed directly onto Lily's arm. The girl cried out, dropping the spoon as tears sprang to her eyes. The burn reddened instantly, angry welts rising against her pale skin. Aaron shot to his feet, fury surging. "Enough!" his voice thundered, echoing off the kitchen walls. He seized Lily's arm gently, rushing her to the sink, running cool water over the wound. Lily sobbed quietly, pressing her face into his chest when he pulled her close, her small body trembling against his. Monica's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with feigned horror. "Oh, Aaron, I didn't mean... My hand slipped. Please believe me." Her tears came on cue, but Aaron had learned the difference between sorrow and performance. His storm-gray eyes locked on hers, unflinching. "You've done enough," he growled. Rook lunged forward then, barking sharply, his teeth bared. Monica stumbled back, knocking into the counter, her mask slipping just enough to reveal the flash of something hard and cold in her eyes before she smoothed it over with practiced fear. Aaron lifted Lily in his arms, carrying her past Monica, ignoring her cries of apology. He took her upstairs, cleaned the burn properly, wrapped it in gauze, and sat beside her bed until her sobs quieted. Rook followed, climbing onto the rug beside the bed, his body curling protectively against her. When Lily finally drifted into a fitful sleep, Aaron descended the stairs. He found Monica pacing in the living room, her slender frame tense, her arms folded tightly. "You're making me into a monster," she hissed, her pale blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I've done everything to be a mother to her, and she refuses to let me in. What do you expect me to do?" Aaron's jaw clenched. "I expect you not to hurt her," he said flatly. "That's all." He turned his back on her, his decision already made. Tonight had confirmed what his instincts had been screaming. Later, in the dim light of his study, Aaron called Rick Dawson again. Rick answered with his usual gruff tone. "Whitfield?" "She hurt my daughter again," Aaron said, his voice heavy, controlled rage beneath every word. "I need this investigation moving faster." Rick exhaled audibly. "I'll put someone on her tomorrow. Don't worry, Aaron. If she's hiding something, I'll find it." Aaron set the phone down, his hand tightening around the receiver until his knuckles whitened. He stared into the shadows pooling in the corners of the room, feeling Rook press against his leg. The dog's presence was grounding, a reminder that loyalty could still exist in a house drenched with deceit. That night, the house seemed to breathe uneasily. Monica retired to her room, her door shutting softly but with finality. Aaron remained in Lily's room until long after midnight, listening to her steady breathing, brushing strands of hair away from her freckled cheeks. She stirred once, whispering faintly in her sleep, "Don't hurt me." His chest constricted, and he whispered back, "No one will. Not ever again." He knew this battle was only beginning. Monica's performance could fool the neighbors, perhaps even the outside world, but Aaron now saw her for what she was. And with Rick digging into her past, the truth would no longer stay hidden in the shadows. The following morning dawned gray with a light drizzle pattering against the streets of Portland. The city seemed subdued, its skyline blurred by mist rolling in from the river. Aaron Whitfield walked through the station's glass doors, with his collar turned up against the damp, his face drawn and eyes shadowed from a restless night. He had not wanted to leave Lily, but duty called, and besides, he trusted Rook to remain by her side at home. The German Shepherd was nearly 4 years old now, strong, intelligent, and fiercely loyal, his sleek black and silver coat gleaming even in low light. His amber eyes were always sharp, and though Aaron had trained him as a K-9 partner in his earlier years, Rook had long since become more than a service animal. He was family, a guardian whose devotion never faltered. Inside the precinct, Aaron's longtime colleague and friend Rick Dawson awaited him in his office. Rick was in his mid-50s, built broad and weathered from decades of investigative work. His hair was more salt than pepper now, cropped short, and his face carried deep lines from years spent staring at crime scenes and paperwork alike. His voice was gravelly but steady, and his presence commanded respect without ever needing to raise his tone. Rick had once been a rising detective star before a botched undercover sting left him scarred, both physically, a thin pale line stretching from his jaw to his ear, and emotionally, fueling his distrust of masks people wore in public. It was this experience that made him relentless in seeing through facades. Rick spread a small folder across the desk. "I pulled a few threads on Monica," he began, his brown eyes narrowing. "Her background checks out on the surface. Born in Wisconsin, studied business administration, worked a couple of years as an assistant manager at a boutique store. But the trail gets fuzzy after she moved to Portland. Too fuzzy." He tapped one page with a thick finger. I traced a string of financial transactions, money wired into accounts that don't line up with her income. Thousands, Aaron, and they're tied to a name you know all too well. Aaron's gut tightened. Lucas? Rick gave a grim nod. Your brother's fingerprints are all over this. Transfers between his business shell companies and accounts Monica opened just before she married you. I'd wager she wasn't just marrying you out of love. Aaron sank into the chair across from him, his mind reeling. Lucas Whitfield, his younger brother, polished, ambitious, and outwardly charming, had always carried a streak of envy. Lucas was tall, clean-shaven, with dark hair always combed meticulously, a smile ready-made for boardrooms and fundraisers. Yet beneath that facade lay an edge sharpened by resentment. Their parents had often compared the two, Aaron, the dutiful son turned officer, and Lucas, the charismatic one chasing financial glory. That divide had left scars Lucas never forgave. Do you think she's working with him? Aaron asked, though the answer was already forming in his chest. Rick leaned back, crossing his arms. I don't think, it's nearly certain. And if Lucas is orchestrating this, Monica's just one piece of a bigger scheme. He's got motive, envy, control, maybe even the company your father left behind. And you've got the one thing he can't have, Lily's trust. That little girl's at the center of it, whether you realize it or not. Aaron's hand clenched into a fist on the desk. He thought of Lily's wide gray eyes, of her small hand clutching his shirt as if she feared he'd vanish, the bruise on her wrist, the burn from the night before. His heart ached with fury and guilt. Rick slid a slip of paper across. Here's an address. Monica met someone there last week. Surveillance caught her walking into a cafe downtown, then slipping into a back office. Guess who owns that building? Aaron glanced down, reading the name etched on the lease. Lucas Whitfield. For a moment, the room spun with memories. Lucas in Chris suits at family gatherings. Lucas's hand on his shoulder offering help that always came with hidden strings. Lucas whispering sharp words behind polite smiles. Aaron's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, a knock on the door interrupted them. It was Emily Hart, one of the younger officers at the precinct. Emily was 27, petite but strong, with cropped chestnut hair and lively green eyes that rarely missed a detail. She had joined the force only 2 years prior, but quickly built a reputation for her sharp instincts and compassion, especially with children. She respected Aaron deeply, often seeking his advice, and her admiration for Rook bordered on adoration. Sergeant Whitfield, Emily said with a small smile, though concern shadowed her expression. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you should know. Someone was spotted hanging around your neighborhood last night. A man, tall, suit, lurking by the Whitfield property. Neighbor called it in, but by the time a patrol car passed, he was gone. Aaron felt his pulse quicken. Lucas? It had to be. Rick's gaze hardened. The walls are closing in. If Lucas is circling the house, he's growing bold. Aaron stood abruptly. I need to get back to Lily. Now. The drizzle had thickened into rain by the time Aaron pulled into the driveway. The house loomed dark against the gray sky, its windows like watchful eyes. He rushed inside, calling out, Lily? Her small voice answered from upstairs, trembling but safe. Relief swept over him, followed quickly by dread. If Lucas had indeed come near, danger was closer than he feared. That evening, Aaron sat with Lily in the living room, the fire crackling softly. She leaned against him, clutching her battered stuffed rabbit. Rook lay across the threshold, a silent sentinel, his ears twitching at every sound beyond the walls. Aaron stroked Lily's hair, promising quietly, No one will take you from me. She nodded, though her eyes still carried the shadow of doubt that broke him inside. When Lily finally drifted to sleep against his arm, Aaron whispered to Rook, Guard her. The German shepherd rose, padded to Lily's side, and curled protectively around her, his steady breathing matching hers. Aaron returned to his study, spreading the folder Rick had given him across the desk. The evidence stared back like a damning prophecy. Financial ties, photographs of Monica entering Lucas's building, transaction logs. Each detail tightened the noose around his family's peace. He closed his eyes, whispering a vow into the silence. I'll protect her, even if it means tearing down my own brother." The rain hammered harder against the glass, the storm outside mirroring the one rising within. For Aaron Whitfield, the line had been crossed. Lucas was no longer just a jealous sibling, he was an enemy. And Monica, with her poised smiles and deliberate cruelty, had chosen her side. The battle for Lily's safety had only just begun. The rain had not ceased since the night Aaron uncovered Rick's evidence. Portland's skyline lay under a curtain of mist, the Willamette River swollen with relentless showers, and the city's hum muffled as though waiting for something to break. Aaron Whitfield arrived at the precinct at dawn, but his mind was elsewhere. Every moment he thought of Lily, her gray eyes clouded by fear, and of Monica's calculated cruelty. Yet another battle was rising, not within his home, but within the company his late father had left behind, the one Lucas had long coveted. That afternoon, Aaron traded his uniform for a charcoal suit, his badge tucked away in his jacket. He seldom entered the sleek high-rise that bore the Whitfield name, but circumstances left him no choice. Shareholders had called an emergency meeting, prompted by whispers Lucas had seeded in the press, stories hinting that Aaron's absence from the boardroom had led to mismanagement, that his focus on police work and family made him unfit to guide the company's future. The lobby buzzed with polished professionals, their conversations a low murmur against the marble floors and glass walls. Aaron walked with measured steps, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure. His storm-gray eyes were hard, but beneath them lay exhaustion carved deep. He did not belong in these gilded halls, yet duty bound him here. Inside the conference room, Lucas was already seated at the long mahogany table. He looked immaculate as always, dark-tailored suit, hair slicked back, his smile practiced to perfection. But when his gaze lifted to meet Aaron's, it carried a glint of cold satisfaction. Lucas stood, spreading his arms as if in welcome. "Brother," he said smoothly, his voice carrying through the room, "at last you've joined us. I was beginning to think you'd abandon this family's legacy." Around the table sat the company's most influential shareholders. Among them was Elizabeth Moore, a woman in her early 50s known for her sharp tongue and sharper ethics. Her short, silver-streaked hair framed a face lined with discipline, and her piercing blue eyes scanned every speaker with clinical precision. Opposite her sat David Klein, 62, a longtime shareholder whose calm demeanor and silver hair gave him the appearance of a judge weighing arguments silently. Both wielded power beyond their votes. Their opinions swayed others like weather vanes catching the wind. Lucas, ever the performer, wasted no time. "Our company's image suffers," he declared, his voice smooth. "While my brother plays hero in uniform, competitors circle us like wolves. Investors wonder if leadership even exists. Perhaps it's time for a steady hand, one focused on the company's survival." His words dripped with poison, masked as concern. Aaron rose slowly, placing his hands firmly on the table. "This company was built by our father, with integrity as its foundation," he said, his deep voice steady. "And I'll not see that legacy twisted into a tool for manipulation. Lucas speaks of stability, but what he offers is deceit. I've seen enough to know his hands are not clean." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. David leaned forward, his fingers steepled. Lucas chuckled, a soft, dangerous sound. "Big words, brother. But words alone don't sway shareholders." He lifted a folder, sliding glossy photographs across the table. Images of Lily appeared, her small frame crouched by a trash bin at school, clutching stale bread, her face streaked with tears. Gasps erupted. "This is the reality," Lucas pressed. "A child neglected while her father buries himself in work. Tell me, is this the man fit to carry an empire?" Aaron's chest tightened as the photos cut through him like knives. He recognized the angle, the invasion of his daughter's pain, his fists clenched, fury threatening to break his calm. "Those images are manipulated," he said firmly. "My daughter has suffered, yes, but not from neglect, from cruelty inside my own house, cruelty tied directly to Monica and to Lucas's schemes." His words struck, but doubt still lingered in the room. At that moment, the door opened. Rick Dawson stepped inside, rain still glistening on his coat. He carried a thin folder, his presence commanding attention despite his weathered appearance. "Apologies for the intrusion," he said, his gravelly voice filling the silence. "But this concerns more than business. It concerns truth." Elizabeth's brow arched. "And you are?" "Detective Richard Dawson," Rick answered, laying the folder on the table. "I've investigated Monica Whitfield for weeks. What I found ties her to Lucas Whitfield directly. Financial transfers, meetings at properties he owns, and communications designed to undermine Aaron Whitfield and his daughter." He slid papers forward, each page heavy with proof. Elizabeth took them first, her sharp eyes scanning, lips pressed thin. David leaned over next, his calm breaking into a frown. Around the table, shareholders whispered urgently. Lucas's smile faltered, his jaw tightening. "Lies!" Lucas snapped, though his smooth mask was cracking. "Convenient lies delivered by my brother's ally." But before he could continue, the door opened again. This time, it was Ann Mitchell, Lily's teacher. She was in her early 30s, modestly dressed in a navy skirt and cardigan, her brown hair tied neatly back, her kind hazel eyes, usually gentle, now burned with resolve. She clutched a small, worn notebook in her hands. "I couldn't stay silent," Anne said, her voice trembling but strong. She placed the notebook on the table. "This is Lily's journal from school, her words, her truth. No manipulation, just the cries of a child enduring what no child should." Elizabeth opened it, and silence gripped the room. As she read aloud the shaky scrawl, "I'm hungry. I miss Mom. Stepmother hurts me. I want to hug Dad, but I'm scared she will send me away." The words lingered like a storm cloud, breaking every mask in the room. Lucas surged to his feet, fury unmasked. "You're all being deceived by a child's scribbles, by a grieving father desperate to cover his failures." His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through the polish. Rick stepped forward, his voice steady as stone. "It's not a child's scribble when the bruises match her words, and it's not failure when a father chooses to fight for his daughter." The room erupted, some in outrage at Lucas, others in defense of Aaron. Elizabeth stood, her eyes flashing. "Enough! This board will not be weaponized by family betrayals. Aaron Whitfield is still his father's son, and this company will not bow to deceit." Lucas's face blanched, his carefully curated mask now shattered. He glared at Aaron with venom. "You'll regret this," he hissed, his voice low, but the threat hung sharp in the air. Aaron met his gaze, unflinching. "Not as much as you'll regret crossing my daughter." The meeting adjourned in chaos, shareholders scattering, voices raised. Rick placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder, his presence grounding. Anne gave a small nod of reassurance before slipping out. Aaron stood alone in the room, with the storm still raging outside, but in his chest burned a resolve steadier than ever. He would protect Lily, not only in the quiet corners of their home, but on the grand stage where shadows tried to consume them. The storm that had rolled across Portland the night of the boardroom clash had not cleared completely. Instead, the city sat beneath a restless sky, heavy clouds pressing low, casting everything in shades of slate. For Aaron Whitfield, the rain seemed almost prophetic, a constant reminder that though Lucas had been cornered, he had not been defeated. The man he once called brother was far too cunning to retreat quietly, and Aaron knew the battle was shifting from the boardroom to the streets, and closer to his own home. That morning, Aaron prepared Lily for school himself. She stood in the hallway with her small backpack slung over her shoulder, her auburn hair brushed neatly into a braid. Her gray eyes, though still shadowed with fear, had begun to hold flickers of trust again. She clutched her worn stuffed rabbit, reluctant to leave it behind. Aaron crouched down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're safe," he whispered. "Rook will watch over you until I pick you up." The German shepherd, lying nearby with his black and silver coat gleaming even in dim light, thumped his tail and rose to attention as though understanding the responsibility being laid on him. At the school gate, Aaron noticed Ann Mitchell waiting. The teacher looked tired, dark circles beneath her hazel eyes, her simple cardigan damp from drizzle, but her voice carried gentle strength when she greeted Lily. "Good morning, sweetheart. You'll sit by me until class starts." She gave Aaron a firm nod, one professional to another. Anne was not just a teacher anymore. She had become a quiet ally. Back at the precinct, Aaron met with Rick Dawson, who sat hunched over a stack of reports. Rick looked more worn than usual, his broad shoulders sagging beneath his coat, but his eyes burned with resolve. "Lucas has started making moves outside the company," he said. "I've had a contact tailing him. He's been meeting with men you don't want near your family, low-level fixers, muscle for hire. Nothing solid yet, but the pattern is there." Rick pushed forward a grainy photograph taken from across a street. Lucas stepping out of a sleek car, shaking hands with a man whose scarred face was partially hidden by a hood. Aaron studied the photo. "Who's the man?" Rick exhaled slowly. "Name's Trevor Hale, ex-security contractor, early 40s, 6'2", built like a wall, shaved head, tattoos down his arms. Fired 3 years ago after a bar fight left a man hospitalized. Since then, he's been picking up dirty work, collection jobs, intimidation. If Lucas is hiring Trevor, he's not just planning to smear your name. He's planning to frighten you into silence." Aaron's jaw tightened. His life as a cop had taught him the type. Men who thrived on fear, who enjoyed the power of seeing others cower. "Then Trevor's already failed," Aaron said flatly. "He won't touch Lily." That night, Aaron kept Lily close. He built a small fire in the living room, letting her curl up against him on the couch while Rook sprawled at their feet. The glow softened the house, but it couldn't drive away the sense of being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow beyond the glass made Aaron's instincts flare. When Lily finally fell asleep, he carried her upstairs, tucked her beneath her blanket, and lingered at the doorway until her breathing steadied. Rook lay outside her room, head resting on his paws, amber eyes unblinking. Sometime after midnight, a sound stirred Aaron from his study, a faint scrape at the back door. He rose silently, his hand instinctively moving to the holster at his hip. Rook padded down the hallway, hackles raised, a low growl vibrating through the silence. Together they moved to the kitchen, where the shadows pressed against the glass panes of the back door. For a moment, Aaron saw it, a silhouette retreating quickly into the drizzle, tall and broad-shouldered, a cigarette ember glowing faintly before being flicked away. He opened the door, but found only wet footprints on the porch steps, already smearing into the rain. Rook sniffed, then barked sharply into the night, his body rigid. Whoever it had been, they had left deliberately, wanting to be seen, not caught. The next morning, Emily Hart stopped Aaron near his locker at the precinct. The young officer's green eyes were troubled as she held up a folded note sealed in a plastic bag. "This was slipped into your mailbox at the station. No fingerprints, just handwriting." Inside, scrawled in block letters, it read, "You can't guard her forever." Emily's jaw tightened as she met Aaron's gaze. "This isn't just intimidation anymore. It's a promise." Aaron nodded grimly. "Then it's one we'll make them break." Later that day, Rick joined Aaron in his office. The older detective's voice was gravelly, but certain. "Lucas is escalating. He wants you rattled, wants you doubting you can keep Lily safe. That's when he'll strike hardest. But listen, Aaron, we have something to use. A contact confirmed Trevor Hale rented a storage unit last week. We'll put eyes on it, see what's moving through. If Lucas is planning something, it'll lead us there." Aaron exhaled, pressing his palms against the desk. He thought of Lily's trembling whisper, "Don't hurt me," and felt fury coil tight inside him. He would not wait for Lucas to act. That evening, after dinner, Aaron walked with Lily through the quiet neighborhood. The drizzle had faded to a mist, the sidewalk slick beneath street lamps. Lily's small hand clung to his as she spoke in a voice more open than usual. "Dad," she said softly, "will the bad people go away now?" Aaron bent down, meeting her eyes. "I'll make sure they do," he promised. She nodded, clutching his hand tighter, as though sealing his vow. Rook trotted beside them, scanning every shadow, ears pricked, the embodiment of vigilance. But as they turned back toward home, Aaron's eyes caught a dark sedan parked half a block away. Its engine idled, headlights dimmed. Though he could not see inside, he knew. Lucas's storm had moved closer. Aaron guided Lily quickly indoors, locking the door behind them. From the window, he watched the sedan pull away slowly, vanishing into the night. His heart hammered, but his resolve hardened. Lucas might control shadows, but Aaron would meet him with light. The night sky above Portland was fractured with low clouds, swollen with rain, but refusing to release it, as if the heavens themselves held their breath. Aaron Whitfield sat in his truck outside the storage facility Rick Dawson had traced to Trevor Hale. The rows of corrugated steel units stretched like silent soldiers, the damp air carrying the metallic tang of rust and oil. Beside him, Rook shifted, the German shepherd's muscles taut beneath his black and silver coat, amber eyes fixed forward, sensing the danger his master could not yet see. Rick stepped out of his own sedan, his heavy trench coat draped across his broad frame, the scar on his jaw catching the glow of the overhead lamp. He carried a flashlight in one hand, a pistol holstered discreetly on his hip. His expression was carved from stone, years of experience sharpening his instincts. "Unit 37, he said in his gravelly tone. "That's where Hale's been going. Let's make it quiet." As they approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. Trevor Hale himself, a towering man with a shaved head, thick arms sleeved in tattoos, and eyes as cold as the rain-soaked steel around them. He wore a bomber jacket scarred with wear, his boots crunching on gravel as he stepped forward. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low, rumbling like distant thunder. Aaron's hand hovered near his holster. "Step aside, Trevor. You know what Lucas has dragged you into. Walk away, and you'll still have a choice." Trevor's lip curled into something between a grin and a snarl. "Choice? You think men like me get choices? Lucas pays. I deliver." He reached into his jacket, and Rook erupted into a bark that shattered the silence. The fight was swift. Trevor lunged, but Rick swung his flashlight hard against the man's wrist, sending a metal crowbar clattering to the ground. Aaron drove forward, tackling Trevor with trained precision, the struggle grinding across gravel. Trevor's fists were heavy, fueled by years of violence, but Aaron's resolve was heavier, his daughter's face flashing in his mind with every strike he blocked. Rook launched himself forward, teeth flashing, pinning Trevor until the cuffs clicked into place. Rick's breath steamed in the cold as he hauled the man to his feet. "You're done, Hale," he muttered, shoving him toward the patrol backup, pulling in at the edge of the lot. Inside, Unit 37 lay the true evidence. Boxes stacked high, filled with files, photographs, and devices. Every piece a fragment of Lucas's scheme. On one wall hung surveillance shots of Aaron's house, of Lily at school, of Monica slipping into Lucas's office. Rick's jaw tightened as he sifted through the damning trail. He wasn't just trying to ruin you. He was orchestrating everything: public smear campaigns, financial sabotage, even physical intimidation. Lucas was building an empire of shadows. Among the documents Aaron found something that froze his blood. A letter drafted but never sent, signed by Lucas, promising investors control once the final obstacle was removed. That obstacle was named in black ink, Aaron Whitfield. As dawn approached, Aaron returned home with Rook at his side. The house stood quiet, dew glistening on the hedges, but his heart clenched as he pushed the door open. Lily was gone from her bed. Her stuffed rabbit lay abandoned on the floor, its stitched ears bent. Panic surged through him, hotter than any rage. On the dining table sat a note, the handwriting unmistakably Lucas's. "Meet me at father's old estate by nightfall," or "The girl disappears forever." Rick arrived moments later, reading the note with a grim face. He's desperate. He knows the walls are closing in. That evening, Aaron drove to the estate on the edge of town, a place steeped in memories of childhood summers and family gatherings long before envy split them apart. The old mansion loomed under storm clouds, its once proud white columns stained by time. Windows gaped like hollow eyes, the grounds choked with weeds. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and betrayal. In the grand hall, Lucas waited, dressed immaculately as always in a dark suit, though shadows clung to him like a second skin. Beside him, Lily stood trembling, her gray eyes wide, wrists bound loosely. "Brother," Lucas said, his voice dripping with venom and mockery, "you brought the law, didn't you? Always the good cop, always the hero." Aaron stepped forward, storm-gray eyes locked on his brother. "Let her go, Lucas. This ends now." Lucas laughed bitterly. "Do you know what it's like to be second, to be the shadow to your perfect light? Father praised you for honor, for duty, while I built fortune with my own hands. And still, you, always you." His hand tightened on Lily's shoulder, making her flinch. "So I'll take from you what you love most, and then the world will finally see who's stronger." Before Lucas could act, Rook lunged from the darkness with a growl that shook the hall. The German shepherd knocked Lucas off balance, sending him sprawling. Lily stumbled free, running into Aaron's arms. He held her tight, his voice breaking. "I've got you, baby. You're safe." Rick entered with officers at his side, their weapons raised. "Lucas Whitfield, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, child endangerment, and abuse," Rick declared. Lucas struggled under Rook's weight, his face twisted with rage, but the cuffs closed around his wrists at last. As he was dragged away, Lucas's voice cracked through the hall. "You think you've won, Aaron? You've destroyed your own blood." Aaron's reply was steady, sorrow etched deep into his tone. "You destroyed yourself when you chose hatred over family." In the quiet that followed, Aaron knelt, pressing his forehead to Lily's. She clung to him fiercely, whispering, "You came for me." His chest tightened with tears he refused to hide. "Always," he promised. "I'll never stop." Days later, the trial made headlines. Lucas and Monica both sentenced with evidence uncovered in Trevor's storage unit. The city whispered of scandal, but Aaron no longer cared. His world was smaller, simpler, and infinitely more precious. Lily began therapy under Mrs. Catherine Brown, a woman in her 40s with soft brown curls and a calm voice that coaxed Lily's fears into the open. Slowly, Lily's laughter returned, tentative at first, then freer, her cheeks regaining their lost color. Aaron established the Guardian's Promise Foundation in honor of the battles they had endured, dedicated to supporting children caught in abuse and betrayal. On its opening day, Lily stood beside him, her braid shining in sunlight, Rook at her feet like a sentinel of hope. She clutched the microphone with trembling hands, but found her voice. "I was once afraid, but my dad never left me. He showed me that love is stronger than fear. I want other kids to know they are not alone." The applause that followed was not just for her words, but for survival, for the bond between father and daughter that had withstood betrayal and storm. Aaron wrapped his arm around her shoulders, looking down at the child who had endured so much, yet emerged radiant. In that moment, beneath the light breaking through Portland's clouds, he finally believed it. They had stepped out of the shadows. In the end, this story is not only about a father, a daughter, and a loyal German shepherd. It is about the miracle of love and protection that God places in our lives, even when the storm seems endless. Sometimes the greatest blessing comes in the form of courage to stand, the strength to forgive, or the faith to keep moving forward. Just as Aaron found light for his little girl, we too can trust that God's hand is guiding us in our everyday struggles. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us what you believe was the most powerful moment. And if you believe in the miracles of God's love, write Amen in the comments. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of faith and strength. May God bless you and keep you safe in His light.